This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Sahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellow Wall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 482 of the Yellow Wall Pod. I'm your host Stefan Botzko, and today we'll talk about Edin Terzic leaving Borussia Dortmund and potentially Mats Hummels also out of a contract or not getting one renewed. To discuss all that, bit of an emergency podcast, I must admit. Here with me is Lars Pollmann. Hello Lars, how are you doing?
Hello Stefan, I'm very tired. It's been a long day. It's 3 minutes past 10 p.m. in Germany. I've been awake for I don't even know how long. So apologies in advance if you have to edit out my yawning.
All right, we'll try to podcast around that. So yeah, this morning I did wake up at, I don't know, what was it, 8:30ish. So not as early as Lars did. And I did wake up to the news that Borussia Dortmund have parted company with head coach Edin Terzic. Borussia Dortmund did confirm, and in a personal message, Terzic wrote, quote, "It is incredibly painful for me to say this to all black and yellow fans, but today I'm parting company with Borussia Dortmund. It was a huge honor to win the DFB Pokal with BVB and lead this fantastic club to the Champions League final. After the game at Wembley, I asked for a meeting with the club's senior management team because after 9 years at BVB, including 6 on the coaching staff and 2.5 as a head coach, I feel that the club's new era should begin with a new man on the touchline. Everyone close to me knows that this has been a very difficult decision for me to take over the last few weeks, but after intensive discussions, my fundamental feeling has not changed. I wish Borussia Dortmund the very best. Thank you and see you soon." So that was the statement Edin Terzic spoke into the camera and is being quoted on the club's website. Lars, when you heard the news break, I'm not quite sure if it sort of dripped in over other news outlets or so. I wasn't there live, if you will, but how did you perceive it and what's your initial reaction?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because it actually did drip feed a little bit because Thursday was the day for Dortmund's big season analysis, the so-called Elefantenrunde with all the big wigs. And the first murmurs about there possibly being the surprise were when Ruhrnachrichten were the first, I think, to report that not only were all the big guys there, but also Terzic himself and Nuri Sahin and Dortmund's notary, who's responsible for contracts and drawing that stuff up. And why would he be there if not to confirm the annulment or however that ultimately goes down with Terzic and possibly even start, the concrete negotiations with Nuri Sahin. So when that news got leaked or reported, rather, I think the writing was pretty much on the wall. And I think from then on, I think the first to speculate about Terzic having offered to resign were Patrick Berger of Sky Germany. He's basically, I would say right now, the most in-touch national reporter about Dortmund. So when he posted that on X, which still doesn't really roll off the tongue, does it? I think the jig was basically up, and then like 20 odd minutes later, it was confirmed. My initial reaction, I think, selfishly, a bit disappointed in myself for having written an article just yesterday basically saying that this scenario is pretty unlikely to me. But also remembering our last episode where we touched upon, the final third or whatever of the discussion. I think you asked, should they sack Terzic? I said absolutely not, but I wouldn't be, totally floored by a mutual understanding to part ways, and ultimately that's what happened. Terzic did offer to resign. He asked for the annulment, and he got it. I think in the long run, it's probably the correct decision because the development of the team, or lack thereof, especially over the last season, some personnel decisions, we don't have to rehash everything, but, just the entire complex of Emre Can, making him captain, deciding against signing Edson Alvarez in favor of Emre Can, all that stuff. I think there was scope for improvement in the head coach position. I'm not so sure necessarily that Nuri Sahin is that, but that's something we'll talk about a little later on, I think. And on a personal level, I'm kind of torn between thinking it's the right decision, in sporting terms and all that, but also feeling quite gutted, surprisingly to myself even, for Terzic, because I think there can be absolutely no uncertainty over his level of love and concern for the club, and even, this decision not to, drag it out, maybe get sacked during the season, get more of a severance package or whatever, but deciding, hey, I'm not sure I'm the right guy for this moment, let's part ways amicably. I think that's once again something that speaks in favor of his character, and I think it's a real shame that he's going to go down as the almost man with both the Bundesliga title and the Champions League final, in which they played so well, because even if, I don't think he's at the highest echelon of football coaches, I still think just the kind of guy he is, the love he has for the club and he's transported into the world, I think he would have deserved more than just the one cup in an empty Olympiastadion. But that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, I am very much with you. Pretty much every sentiment you just shared, I share too. It is very commendable that he sort of resigned, if you will, by himself. The one sentence that obviously pokes out from the statement is that his fundamental feeling has not changed. I feel like it's similar for the two of us also, right? There's always he had these successes or almost successes, but sort of there's always this undercurrent of not feeling the footballing development, not having the feeling that he's a coach that can really elevate Dortmund to where they need to be on a long-term basis. And it is obviously sad to say, because on so many other levels, he is such a perfect fit for Dortmund. So it is very sad. I'm not sitting here all giddy that this guy is finally gone. On the contrary, I think it's somewhat of a sad moment for Dortmund that this did not work out in the long term. And I said it before, even when the was a surprise sacking happened, is that I yearn for consistency on the coaching sideline of Borussia Dortmund, and once again, that is not going to be the case. I also think it's commendable that he sort of sees the situation and wants to give Dortmund a sort of clean slate now, with Lars Ricken taking over from Watzke as the CEO of sport, and the decision making that's going to happen, and the reformation of the front office, if you will. So to that extent, it's very commendable. Obviously, that is also maybe some sort of spin. I don't know. Maybe there's more to it, and maybe there's more intrigue behind it. I have no idea what exactly happened. Maybe we'll find out soon, or just what's plainly written on white and black on the website is exactly what went down. So I don't want to really speculate. But for now, I think we need to just say thank you to Edin Terzic for the love and passion he has brought to this team, and I think he has brought a little bit of glue to this club. And obviously, it's a bit of a shame that it did not work out. But on the other hand, I do agree with his decision. And I think everyone else thanked him too. And it's funny because my wife's first reaction is, that'll mean that Mats Hummels will stay on, right? I'm like, I'm not too sure. Let's see what will come out of that. We already had the reports from Ruhrnachrichten that despite the report previously that Hummels would only stay on, if Terzic departs. Now Nachrichten has reported, and I'm pretty sure they have very good source of that Mats Hummels will also not receive a new contract. Lars, what do you make out of that decision? I'll preface this with my personal opinion that I think I would have preferred Hummels to stay on. But what do you make out of that?
I mean, regular listeners will not be surprised when I say that Mats Hummels is my favorite player probably, and definitely whom I believe to be the best / most important, however you want to put it, player in modern Dortmund history, because I don't know about all these legends of yesteryear, but I think offering him an extension after what has transpired over the last few days, which is basically it, would have been a catastrophic decision, because quite clearly I think Hummels made his mind up about not wanting to stay, regardless of the coaching decision, and then he decided for whatever reason to burn some bridges. I mean, the interview before the Champions League final, apparently, I mean, it's been reported, you said earlier you don't want to speculate, but it's hard not to enter the realm of speculation, because there's little on public record. Apparently, he said some things in that interview that weren't published, which went even further. Apparently, there were some dust-ups, behind the scenes. Apparently, kind of a players' revolt, led by Hummels and Marco Reus. I don't think it's a huge surprise that both of these guys are now gone. And I think, to be honest, it would have happened anyway, regardless of Terzic's position. I think ultimately Hummels kind of put himself over the club. That's what it feels like. I don't know if that's entirely fair to him.
I don't know. You could make the case that Hummels loves the club so much that he wanted to ring the alarm of what was going wrong.
Yeah, but you don't do that 3 days ahead of a Champions League final.
I very much agree with that.
I mean, the only reason that didn't completely blow up as a story was that they played really well against Real Madrid, and Hummels was one of the best players on the pitch. If Dortmund had been blown out by Real Madrid, which wasn't, completely out of the question ahead of the game as we discussed, then let's say Real Madrid score early and then it's a 4-0, 5-0 win for them. I mean, it would have been a huge talking point that Hummels put the team in danger or whatever with the selfish interviews. As it happened, that wasn't the case, but still, I think he will have the opportunity to make his case why how he behaved was proper and leader-like or whatever. But from what we know as of right now, I think his behavior was quite clearly that of a player who knew he wasn't going to get a contract extension, decided for whatever reason to burn some bridges, maybe make a point, as you said, in terms of sounding the alarm or whatever. But ultimately, I think that's probably going a bit too far, because it's not like Dortmund were absolutely horrible under Edin Terzic. I mean, they made the Champions League final. They were quite close to winning that. They were 1 goal away from winning the league last season. And obviously, we've discussed at length at multiple occasions how we don't necessarily see the kind of development that we wanted to see from Dortmund. And I've made the point that I don't think Edin Terzic is the kind of coach any other club in Europe would fall head over heels over. Maybe that has changed with the Champions League final. But yeah, it's not like he was so terrible that Hummels had to make a grand gesture or whatever. So I don't know exactly what happened there, why it went down as it did, but ultimately I don't think there was any choice but to not give him a new contract, because the signal to the world would have been quite bad.
Yeah, it's just annoying to me personally. I must say that Mats Hummels is the way he is, because I don't think had he handled things a little bit better, I think there would have been much more of an option for him to remain in the club. Obviously, I don't know what his personal intentions are and if he even wants that or not. But either way, my hope was that he would somehow manage to remain at Dortmund for one more season. I think this would have helped in terms of team building, but at least now there's certainty as well, and Dortmund can try to replace him, find a new center back. Hopefully, Niklas Süle managed to find a little bit more of a, I don't know, training program that gets him in better shape during this offseason, because I now do believe that Süle and Schlotterbeck is the set center back pairing going forward, and needs to be relied on. And obviously you can't just go into the new season with two center backs, so I think Dortmund have now a little bit of homework to do on that position. But before we continue to talk about the center back position, let's segue back to the whole Nuri Sahin thing, because obviously the reports are also that Nuri Sahin is the favorite to take over from Edin Terzic together with assistant coach Sven Bender. Lars, if that scenario indeed happens, what are your thoughts about Nuri Sahin as a head coach of Borussia Dortmund after half a year as assistant coach?
I mean, we touched on this last week, didn't we? I think the gist of our discussion then was why would they have to get rid of Edin Terzic just so they can sign Nuri Sahin? Is it so likely that he goes elsewhere and has a massive instant impact and never turns or never comes back to Dortmund? I'm a bit surprised that it's so set in stone immediately that he's going to be the guy. I think quite obviously the succession plan was already set in stone when he returned from Turkey, where he was already basically head coach, just not a name because he didn't have the license and still doesn't have the license, which is an interesting tidbit. It's not going to be a problem because he's apparently started his UEFA Pro license course, and the DFL, which is the German Football League, regulations state that the head coach either has to have the license or at least has to have started the respective coursework. So it's going to be fine from that regard. I mean, it's a gamble. I don't think there's any denying that. He's 35. He's only coached as the main guy in Turkey and not at, Beşiktaş, Fenerbahçe or Galatasaray, but Antalyaspor, which I don't know how much pressure there is on that club in that league. It's not like they are expected to win the Super League or win the Turkish Cup or whatever. He did well, especially early on there, had an instant impact when he switched from the playing field to the dugout. But I think anyone who's telling you he knows exactly how Nuri Sahin is going to work as a head coach is talking out of their asses, because he's been a head coach in a league nobody here watches, with all due respect. And then he's been the assistant coach for the last half year. And I mean, we can debate on how much better Dortmund got after the winter break. I don't know that the results in the Bundesliga were, particularly improved upon. I don't know that performances in the Bundesliga were necessarily hugely improved, and if they were, I would argue that might have been down to Ian Maatsen and Jadon Sancho just as much or more than Nuri Sahin and Sven Bender, just the nature of the game. At this level, football is a player's game, not a coach's game. So I don't know. I think it's a bit surprising to me that there's no hesitation. They are going to give the job to a 35-year-old. At least he's a bit older than me, which is nice. Probably the last Dortmund coach to be older than me, if this trend continues. But then again, it's also not surprising because this has been Dortmund's MO for so long now. It's if you know everyone at the club, if you have what we call Stallgeruch, then you have a way in. And why would that change when Lars Ricken takes over from Hans-Joachim Watzke? He's been at the club longer than Hans-Joachim Watzke. So And it's also not necessarily a negative, obviously, but I just think it's a gamble. And I mean, there are a few coaches out there who I would think would make a compelling hire for Dortmund, whether that's Graham Potter, Roberto De Zerbi, I don't know, even Xavi Hernandez, maybe. I mean, it's just a bit weird to me that everything is just set in stone. It has to be Nuri Sahin because we cannot lose him. I don't know that what he's done so far that warrants it. And obviously, in half a year when they've plowed through the league and he's been better than Xabi Alonso, I can eat my hat. But right now, I think that's a bit of a tough sell on me.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I have huge trust issues when it comes to Nuri Sahin. Ever since he said that the fans know how he will decide, and then he decided to leave for Real Madrid, I always felt like, it's difficult between me and Nuri Sahin. Let's put it this way. And like I said before, I think on the last episode, if Dortmund, if Nuri Sahin were to leave, fine by me. If he's really the coaching wonder kid, then he'll eventually return with more experience under his belt and do a fine job at Dortmund, because I don't think there's never going to be a situation when Nuri Sahin, of all coaches, then would not find an opening at Dortmund at some point. But yeah, if he's hired now, indeed, I'm right there with you. I think it's a huge gamble. Edin Terzic also was a huge gamble. But I think Nuri Sahin is completely unproven. I obviously don't know what exactly his philosophy is. And maybe, like when Tuchel arrived, for example, after Klopp, it was instantly visible what Tuchel's idea, understanding, and game philosophy is. I don't know if we'll see that with Sahin now or not. I'm intrigued. I feel like we should see something like that relatively soon from a new coach, considering its new beginnings. But it's also going to be very interesting how the whole recruitment process works out and squad planning with Sahin at the helm. If that improves for Dortmund's sake or not, I think I'll judge that as well. But yeah, it's to me, I'm not 100% happy with this coaching hire of Nuri Sahin, because I think that Dortmund should find someone who has a better track record. And that is sort of my opinion.
Or a track record would be nice.
Or a track record. I mean, he has a track record. It's just not one that we can really assess.
It's not a relevant one for a club that was just in the Champions League final. Yeah. I mean, let me put it this way. If Nuri Sahin hadn't played for Dortmund, would there be even the remotest possibility that they would be interested in signing him as head coach?
I don't think so.
Voila. I mean, I don't want to talk myself into too much of a rage, because I actually like Nuri Sahin both as a person. I liked him as a player, and I think he might be a good coach. But all of these clubs trying to catch lightning in a bottle with their Xabi Alonso lookalikes, that's not the only way to be successful nowadays. I mean, it's just, again, the mind boggles at the thought that they are just waltzing into the situation of giving Nuri Sahin, who is 35 years old, who was a player until, 2.5 years ago, who doesn't have the necessary license yet. They're just giving him the keys to the franchise, as it were. I mean, it's obviously it might work out, but again, if he hadn't played for Dortmund successfully, and if he wasn't great pals with Hans-Joachim Watzke, and if he hadn't played alongside Sebastian Kehl for years and all that stuff, if Nuri Sahin had the same exact career at who's to say, Bayer Leverkusen, doesn't matter, and he returned there as the assistant coach, would anybody seriously consider him not only for Dortmund but for other head coaching jobs after half a season in Germany as an assistant coach? No, you wouldn't. There's no reason for that. So, of course, I wish him all the best because, as I said, I like him. I think
because you wish yourself all the best.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm a bit detached. So if Dortmund are shit, that's not nice. But at least it's worthy of writing and talking about them. But obviously, I would rather them do better than they have previously. But it's just not a given to me, and especially when you consider that they let go of someone who so very much cared about this club, which I think that's something that sometimes there's a disconnect between match-going fans and fans who are really close, and I don't want to sound derogatory, but internet fans. Maybe that's not nice for international fans in our audience to hear, but there is definitely a sort of a disconnect, and you saw it with Marco Reus. Who was never really the locals champion until he said goodbye, because there was no chance for him ever to be called onto the Südtribüne before, because he never really looked for that kind of closeness with them. And now you see it with Terzic. The local fans are all really sad to see someone go who cares about the club, who is a genuine fan, whose love and concern for the club is genuine. And people from further away, I don't know that I blame them for it, but they seem to be happy about it because they see a coach lacking perhaps in the highest levels of tactical ability or whatever. So I think letting go of Edin Terzic, I can understand the decision. We've talked about it making sense. But then to turn around and say, hey, let's just give the job to his assistant, who's already on the staff, who already has an impact. I mean, they might as well just have kept going with this current setup, because the only thing that changes is, the exact measure of responsibility within the coaching staff. I just, the entire thing doesn't really sit well with me.
Well, if I may add to that, it's also Lars Ricken's first decision to a certain extent. It would be...
No, it really isn't, because once Edin Terzic says, I want to go, are they going to keep him against his will, basically? That doesn't work.
But I mean hiring Shine, if that so happens. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's not like Dortmund sacked Terzic, but, that's why I said about the earlier speculations. Did he just want to prevent something that was always going to happen or not? Get ahead of the narrative or whatever? I have no idea. But that's not what I wanted to say. What I really think about is I want a rigid process of hiring a new coach, and I think that includes of talking to a few coaches and candidates out there, and not just saying, Nuri, you're a guy, we're hiring you, no questions asked. I would love to be a more rigid process, if you will. And you just named a few candidates. Heck, even Jürgen Klopp is son of a job.
I don't
right
think
now.
he would have to interview Stefan.
No, but obviously I'm joking with that one. But all I'm saying is I want some more due diligence and them looking for who is out there and then making a decision based on that. Obviously, they got to assess Nuri Sahin up close as an assistant coach for half a season, so that sort of is his CV or whatever you want to call it. But nevertheless, I'm right there with you. To me, it's a little bit annoying that it seems to be such a slam dunk for Nuri Sahin when it really should not be. And that is all I have to say about the subject. And maybe in the next few days, maybe he'll be announced tomorrow, or maybe there will be reports that Dortmund are also talking to other coaches, because obviously Borussia Dortmund is an attractive club, and I'm sure there are coaches out there that would love to coach Borussia Dortmund, get the chance to create something new and fresh with the current situation. There's a lot of freedom to do it right now. So I really hope that the latter is the case. But that's pretty much all I have to say right now. Lars, I don't know if you have any further thoughts on the situation. Otherwise, I would say we'll just leave it here and then see what happens next.
The only thing I'm a bit annoyed at people's attempts to make Dortmund's hire and fire mentality a thing or whatever. And I've seen numerous lists of how Dortmund are cycling through so many coaches. They actually don't. It's entirely on par with most football clubs. It's just how the business is run these days. Terzic has been the head coach in 2.5 of the last 3.5 seasons. That's an entirely plausible, veritable, reasonable length of time to be spent with one head coach in modern football. Lucien Favre got 2.5 years. Thomas Tuchel got 2 years, would have gotten a lot longer if he wasn't a bit of a insert whatever word you like here. Peter Bosch was completely untenable. Peter Stöger was always going to be, an interim. So what are we talking about? The only decision that really stinks is Marco Rose only getting 1 year. But even then, I think if people are really honest with themselves, the development of the team under Marco Rose was even worse than what we had under Edin Terzic in some regards, even if results in the Bundesliga were much better. I don't think that anyone can honestly tell me that the team went entirely in the correct direction with Marco Rose, and he was assassinated by stupid Dortmund bosses or whatever. That's just not.
I mean, if we now look over at Leipzig, it's not like we're enviously peeking at their coaching sideline,
No. I mean, he was a fine choice for Dortmund. It worked out okay, but it was not like, a slam dunk that he was going to usher in a new era for Dortmund. I don't think that necessarily they'd have won the league with Marco Rose and even made the Champions League final this season. I mean, there's no reason to think that. So, looking back at the coaches since Klopp, in 2015, who was coach at Bayern? Pep Guardiola. How long ago does that feel? I don't even know who was head coach at Bayer Leverkusen. Roger Schmidt, I'm guessing. You can go down the list. I mean, the outlier isn't what Dortmund is doing or what Bayern is doing. The outlier is Man City keeping Pep Guardiola around because they have all the money in the world. The outlier is Liverpool having or being blessed by Jurgen Klopp, who is an outlier in and of itself. And Atletico with Diego Simeone and all that stuff. What Dortmund are doing in terms of cycling through coaches is completely in keeping with how football is run these days. So that's not a narrative I want to subscribe to.
All right. Thank you, Lars. Everyone else out there, thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week, I hope, maybe with the Yellow Wall Season Awards, maybe with another discussion about a new coach. We'll see. Or I'll be honest, for me at work, it's going to be an extremely busy week, so we might not be back next week at all. So anyhow, as always, everyone out there, thank you for listening. And Lars, thank you for coming on and doing this podcast with me, despite you being very tired. I very much appreciate that. And until then, goodbye.